Hey guys, today I want to talk about how you go about writing the autobiographical sketch. It can be kind of intimidating at the beginning because within the ABS, you're only given 150 characters for each of the 32 unique activities that you've engaged in after the age or since the age of 16. And even when you're doing this, it's really important that you integrate the CanMED rules when you're writing up your description of the responsibilities and what you actually did. But that's something that's usually easier said than done, right? The question students often ask, or people applying to medical school, is how do you go about doing that? So today I want to show you guys how you should go about doing that using basically three examples. So just to give you a bit of background first about myself, I'm currently a student at an Ontario medical school, and I was able to get in at the young age of 21. So why don't we get started now? So the first thing that you want to do is, as I said, list all the activities, all of them, anything that you can really think of that you've been involved in since you were 16 years old. And so these have been divided up into different categories. So employment, volunteer activities, extracurricular activities, awards and accomplishments, and research, and then other. And now this other category is usually used for stuff like hobbies. If you have a really interesting hobby that you're a part of, right? This is something for you to include here. You might be someone, if even if it's something as simple as baking, right? If that's a really passionate hobby you have of yours, you can go ahead and include that under that category. So for our purposes of this video, we're going to use some common examples that pre-med students usually have. So we have, first example we're going to talk about is a restaurant manager. So, we're going to talk about shawarma restaurant manager because that's kind of what I did when I was in pre-med. I worked at a shawarma restaurant. And the second is being a researcher at Dr. X lab. And then third, again, another very common one is hospital volunteering. Okay, so once you now, again, I just have three right now, but when you're doing this, you would go and write out all of the activities, right? Try to get to 32. I know it does sound like a lot, but if you do really reflect on your life, you'll be able to get there. Okay. Once you've done that, it's now important to explore really what are the CanMed rules, okay? So why don't we hop on? This is just a link to their website and see what the CanMed rules actually are. Now, it's really important that you really read through this because this is what kind of medical admission offices are kind of looking for in your description. So it's important you include these elements and really have an understanding. So first you have the medical expert, communicator, collaborator, leader, health advocate, scholar, and professional, okay? So why don't we go through these? So basically the layout is you have the medical expert, how they define it, the description, and basically what the competencies are that are included in them, okay? So here again, you can go through these. So we have the communicator two, definition, description, key concepts. And again, you can go through all of these on your kind of own time, read them, and see what they're all about. Now, the really important aspect I want you to focus in on are these key competencies that they've given. Okay, because I'm going to show you, but we're going to be using these for our descriptions. But first, why don't we head back to our uh, website to head back to first talk about the next step. So what's step three? So now you've done reading over all the stuff on the website and now you're ready to actually go ahead and write your description. So the first thing you want to do is, again, you have your activities list. So what did we have here? We had these 3 activities, right? So we're gonna take these, bring them back here, okay? And now what we wanna do is decide on which competencies that we want to show with these activities. And again, it's important to have your application as balanced and well-rounded as possible. So you're showing, with the different activities, you're showing all the different competencies. So, for example, the activity of being a shawarma restaurant manager. So looking at the CanMED clusters, and this is when you kind of do some reflecting on your own role and what you did. You kind of think to yourself, what best can I fit this in? And you usually try to fit the activity into 1 or even 2 roles. If you're able to fit into 2 roles, that's great. But again, if you can't do 2, 1 is also okay to do. But I would say if you're trying to fit 3 in, that'll be just too much. So stick to 2. Okay, so looking at this, you know what? I did a lot of, again, being the manager, I was being a leader, right? So that's important. And I was also a collaborator, right? Because, I was working in a team with other people, collaborating with them. Okay, so we got the competencies we want to show for that. So when we write up our description, we're going to keep that in mind. Now, researcher at Dr. X lab. Okay, so looking back here, scholar. This is a great way to show an activity that I was kind of a scholar at, right? I'm gonna put in scholar. And let's see, what else can we fit in? Now, again, you're just reflecting back on your own time doing it. And one thing I did do during that role was I would communicate my findings to either lab members or in poster presentations. So the other thing I would talk about is a communicator, right? So I'm gonna add that. Okay. And we're gonna go to a hospital volunteer. Right, so what did I show there? Now, again, we want to make sure it's balanced, so we don't want to include communicator or collaborator again. We already did leader and we already did scholar, right? So, you know what? Why don't we go with health advocate this time, right? I was working in the hospital and again, acting kind of as a health advocate, helping wherever I could. Okay. Now that you've decided on the competencies that you want to show, it's time to get more specific, right? Being a leader, that's very general. So is a collaborator, and so are all these other terms. So this is what you do next. You go back here to the CanMEDS rules, right? And so for the first one, I had selected a leader, right? So I'm going to go back here and read through this part. The key competencies, right? And I'm gonna pick one that I think that I can kind of change to fit what I did during my activities, or that I think best represent. Or basically, you want to choose the key competencies that you would like to show in this activity. So this one, let's say, contribute to the improvement of healthcare delivery in teams, organizations, and systems. Okay, so this is a competency that I'd like to show to the admissions council when they're reading over my application, right? And the reason you're doing this is what basically a physician is supposed to embody, these qualities, these competencies. And what we're doing here by picking out these descriptions are basically using them as a structure for our own activity. So it becomes really clear to the admission council that we have those qualities that they're looking for. Okay. Okay, great. So now we're going to go to collaborator and see what we can include there. Okay, in collaborator, let's read through these competencies. What do I think? Okay, so why don't we use this one? Work effectively with physicians and other colleagues in the healthcare profession. Okay. Okay, so those are the competencies and specific competencies I want to show with that activity. Next one I do is I go to researcher at Dr. X lab. Now, scholar again is quite general. So, what key thing do I want to show? I read through these competencies, and again, you can choose whichever one you think you can kind of mold into your own description. But for example, I think engage in the continuous enhancement of their professional activities through ongoing learning. Okay, so I think that's one that I can include. So I'm going to paste that into here. And now let's go to communicator. And I'm going to read through here key competencies. Patients, families. That's not one that really matches. Share information. Sorry, am I in the right one? Okay. So I'm going to look through. Hmm. Okay. Okay, so here we can also use these competencies here on the right. So one that I think I can mold is share healthcare information and plans with patients and their families. Okay, I'm gonna take that. That's one thing I can incorporate. And now for the last one, health advocate. So we're gonna go to health advocate and choose which one key competency I think I can show or something similar. So I'm gonna go with this one. Respond to an individual patient's health needs by advocating with the patient within and beyond the clinical environment. Okay, so this is important. These are the things that I want to talk about. Okay. Now to actually write the description, right? We've basically selected the CanMED clusters here that we want to do for each activity. So now we're actually going to go ahead and write the description. So I'm going to just do some this was our CanMED cluster selected for the activity. Let me format this nicer. Okay. Again, right now we're working on the shawarma restaurant. Let me remove these examples. Okay, so now we're gonna write responsibilities, or basically the description, and this is what we're gonna then write into our OMSAS application. Has to be 150 characters. Okay, let's think. So I want to be able, in this description, the main points I want to bring out is that I was a leader, that I contributed to the improvement, right, of something in teams, organizations, and systems. So somehow I improved the team, the organization, right? And I also want to talk about collaborator, right? That I was able to effectively work with different people. So to highlight the basically work effectively with others is what I want to show. And it's similar to this point already, and contribute to the improvement, right? And also delivery in teams, right? And systems. So it's important to integrate these things into your description. So, okay, so a description I could write is voted best restaurant in area by effectively leading and training voted, sorry, you can make this better, voted best local restaurant by effectively leading and training multiple teams of 5 to 7 people to deliver excellent customer service and cuisine. Okay, and let's do a count to make sure that we're under our 250. We're at 142. Perfect. So look at how we did this description, right? We made sure to show that we work effectively with others, right? So again, training multiple teams of 5 to 7 people. So this shows that you're working with different people. And look at how we talked about voted best local restaurant. So this shows that as a leader, I was able to improve the teams that I was working on to be voted the best local restaurant. Okay, great. Let's go on to the next one then. Research at Dr. X lab. Okay, so we got here our CanMed clusters. So do this. Okay, there we go. This is a separate one. Okay, so CanMed clusters that we want to discuss are right here. Okay, and now we want to write our actual description. And I want to make sure I include this thing, right? So I want to talk about, again, some sort of ongoing learning or talking about learning as in this description, and also share information with others, right? Share information and plans with their patient. Now, do you see how I mean by you kind of got to modify the descriptions that are given for it to suit the activity that you're doing, right? So these are the things I want to talk about. I want to talk about learning. I want to talk about sharing informations with people, okay? So learn to use MRI imaging software. Okay, so again, now this hits that scholar part, learning new things, right? And performed MRI analysis on magnetotactic bacteria. Now this shows that I used the knowledge that I learned, right, to enhance the professional activity that I was doing, which was research in this case. Oops, got this one wrong. And now lastly, presented findings clearly and accurately to lab members. Okay, so what did this show? This shows, now this last part shows that I'm sharing the information now to others. Okay, great. Now let's go to our last example that we have. Hospital volunteer. Okay, so in this okay, our last example, hospital volunteer, and we have the CanMed cluster health advocate. Okay, oops. Now to actually write the description that we're gonna use. Fix this. Okay, so we want to make sure that we're showing that we're responding, right, to a patient, or it doesn't have to be a patient, but could be to anyone's needs by advocating, right, in the environment that we're working in. That's the main thing I want to show, that I'm responding to a patient's needs and advocating for them in the environment I'm working in. So a way I can write that is enhanced patient experience by responding to patients' non-clinical needs, advocating for them to staff, and providing support to patients' family members. Okay, oops, let's fix these mistakes and let's do the character count to make sure we're not going over. And perfect, 150 right on the dot. Okay, so do you see the 3 steps that are taken in order to write up your description? Right? You list the activities, pick the CanMed clusters, and then use those key competencies, right? These key competencies are on every page to then integrate that into your description. And what this does is it really allows the admission admission office to really see those activities and see those qualities that a physician should possess in your application. Even though it's, these CanMEDS are for physicians who are actually working, but it's really important that you show them that you do already have these qualities, but in different situations and in different scenarios. So it kind of shows how, once you're in medical school and you do become a physician, you already have some of those qualities, or most of those qualities are already there. Okay, thank you so much for watching this video on how to write your autobiographical sketch. Please feel free to reach out to me if you do have any questions. And you know what, this is really just one way that I believe is very effective. One way that's really, so this is just one way that's really effective to write your application. And thank you.